All right, let's talk about a war zone. But I'm not talking about trenches or, tanks. I'm talking about lecture halls, high school classrooms,
Yeah,
university
it
campuses.
really has become one.
Because if you look at the headlines, and certainly if you look at the stack of research we're covering today, education has pretty much turned into a battlefield.
It really has. And the weapon of choice isn't a ruler or a grade book anymore. It's algorithms. We are in the middle of a very strange, very tense moment.
So today, we are unpacking this idea of the AI detection arms race. And to do that, we're doing a deep dive into a fascinating and, frankly, kind of terrifying article by Johan Steyn.
On the erosion of trust in education, yeah.
But we aren't stopping there. We're also pulling in perspectives from security heavyweight Bruce Schneier, reports from the conversation, and some very specific new guidelines from the University of Sydney.
It's a heavy stack of reading, but it's so necessary because the narrative out there is usually pretty simple, right? It's just, kids are cheating, we need to catch them.
Right, that's the surface level. But the mission of this deep dive isn't to figure out how to stop students from cheating. We're going deeper. We're looking at the collateral damage. What happens when institutions panic?
And what happens when we try to solve a technology problem with more technology?
Exactly.
That is the crux of it. Steyn's central argument, and it backed up by Schneier's technical analysis, is that we are creating a no-win scenario.
A no-win scenario.
We're deploying these black box tools to catch AI, but in the process, we might be destroying the very thing education relies on.
Which is?
The relationship, the trust between the student and the teacher.
Okay, let's start with that black box concept.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of people, parents, even some teachers, the assumption is if you didn't cheat, you have nothing to worry about.
Right.
You turn in your essay, a machine scans it, gives it a thumbs up, and you go home. Why is Stan saying that's such a dangerous assumption?
Because that assumption relies on the tool working like a spell checker. You spelled receive wrong, or you copied this sentence from Wikipedia. Those are facts. You can check them.
Okay.
But these AI detectors, they don't work like that at all. They aren't fact checkers. They are probability engines.
So when a student gets flagged, it's not because the machine found the source material. It's because the machine is guessing.
Essentially, yes. It's a statistical guess.
Yeah.
And that introduces this massive amount of anxiety. I mean, you have students now being judged by a score they can't see based on an algorithm they don't understand.
With consequences that could derail their entire future. We're talking scholarships, expulsions, reputations.
Exactly. It's huge.
It feels like we've skipped a step. How did we get to the point where we're trusting these things so blindly? Steyn describes this as a cycle, right?
Right. It's the mechanics of the arms race itself. You have to look at the scale of the problem. Suddenly, almost overnight, the world was flooded with AI-generated text.
It's everywhere.
It's in schools, yes, but it's also clogging up court systems, media outlets, scientific journals. It is cheap, fast, and infinite.
So the institutions panic. They see this flood coming, and they want to build a dam.
Precisely. They need a shield. So vendors step in and say, hey, we have a tool that can detect this. And on the surface, that seems totally logical. Bruce Schneier compares it to the early days of spam filters.
Oh, yeah. I remember when email first got just unusable.
Right. Your inbox was a mess if you want to cruise. And
Yeah.
So we built filters. The spammers got smarter, so the filters got stronger. It's a classic arms race. But Schneier points out a massive critical difference between blocking a spam email and flagging a student's doctoral thesis.
All right. If my spam filter eats an email from a Nigerian prince, I don't lose my degree.
Exactly. The stakes in education are deeply personal. Schneier argues that when you apply this security mindset to education, you create perverse incentives.
Perverse incentive.
You end up spending all your energy trying to detect the enemy, the student, rather than actually teaching them.
I want to drill down into the tech for a second, because this is where the trust part really breaks down for me. You mentioned these are probability machines. Can you break that down?
Sure.
If I'm a student writing an essay on, The Great Gatsby, what is the detector actually looking for?
It's looking for two main things, and they have some funny names. Perplexity and burstiness.
Okay, those sound like made-up words from a sci-fi novel. Let's break them down. Start with perplexity.
It do sound a bit abstract. Perplexity is basically a measure of surprise. If you are an AI, you are trained on a massive data set of human language. Your whole goal, your entire reason for existing, is to predict the most likely next word in a sentence.
So the AI is trying to be predictable.
Exactly. It's built for it. So AI writing has very low perplexity. It's smooth. It flows. It chooses the path of least resistance every single time.
And humans.
Humans are chaotic. We use weird words. We take left turns in our sentences. We have high perplexity. We surprise the reader.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about burstiness?
That refers to the variation in sentence structure. AI tends to be very monotonous. Subject, verb, object.
Oh.
Same length, sentence after sentence. It has a steady rhythm, like a metronome.
And humans are bursty.
Exactly. We write a long, winding sentence with a lot of clauses because we're getting excited about an idea, and then, bang, short sentence. We vary our rhythm. That variation is burstiness.
So if I write a really clean, grammatically perfect, consistent essay, if I really polish it until it shines,
To a detector, you look like a robot.
that seems completely counterintuitive. We spend years teaching students to write clearly, to be concise, and now we're saying, if you do that too well, you're cheating.
That is exactly the false positive trap. And here is the kicker. Even the people selling these tools admit it. Turnitin is the big player here, right? They're the
Yeah,
standard.
everyone uses them.
Even they have stated explicitly that their AI detection scores should be treated as, and I'm quoting here, tools to support interpretation, not a final verdict.
Not a final verdict. But come on, let's be real about the workload teachers have. If I'm a professor grading 200 papers a weekend, and the dashboard turns red and says 85% AI, am I really going to sit there and interpret the nuance?
That's the reality gap. In theory, it's just a flag. In practice, it acts like a conviction. Once you see that number, you can't unsee it. You are immediately biased against that student.
You're reading their work, looking for flaws, looking for the bot.
You stop reading for content and you start reading for evidence.
So we are outsourcing our judgment to a machine that is admittedly flawed. But Steyn makes a really important point here. This isn't just about random errors. It's not like everyone has an equal chance of getting flagged.
No. And this is the part that should make us all really uncomfortable. Steyn argues that the error is biased. There are specific groups of people who are statistically more likely to get caught in this net, regardless of their honesty.
Who are we talking about?
Well, go back to that idea of perplexity and burstiness. Who writes in simple, predictable, standard sentences?
Someone who isn't confident in their writing.
Exactly. The cautious writer. Maybe it's a freshman who is just terrified of making a grammar mistake. So they stick to the rules. Subject, verb, object. They don't take any risks. To the algorithm, that lack of surprise looks exactly like ChatGPT.
That's brutal. The student who is trying the hardest to be correct is the one who looks the most fake.
And it gets worse. Steyn specifically highlights the second language learner. This is a huge issue. Think about how you learn a new language. Do you learn the slang, the weird idioms, the complex poetic stuff first?
Oh no, you learn the textbook rules. The cat is on the table.
Exactly. You learn the standard patterns. You map your writing heavily onto the grammatical rules. So you have students from China or Brazil or Steyn's home context of South Africa who are working incredibly hard to write perfect English.
And because their writing is so structurally sound and predictable.
They trigger the detectors at a much higher rate than native speakers.
So a native speaker who writes a messy, slang-filled draft might pass because they look humanly chaotic. But a non-native speaker who writes a polished, rule-following draft fails.
Yes. We are effectively penalizing students for mastering the basics of the language.
Meanwhile, I assume the actual cheaters, the ones who really want to game the system, they're doing just fine.
Oh, they're breezing through. This is the prompt engineer profile. If you know how the AI works, you just tell it, write this essay, but insert a grammatical error every 3 sentences, or use high burstiness.
So the savvy cheater bypasses the tool, and the honest, cautious student gets flagged.
Steyn has a devastating phrase for this. He says, we are creating a system that risks punishing honesty and rewarding confidence.
Punishing honesty and rewarding confidence, that really lands. It feels like we're building a system that selects for all the wrong things.
And remember, Steyn is writing from South Africa. He points out that inequalities in access to technology and language proficiency already shape educational outcomes. Now you add these detectors on top of that. You're just piling on.
It's just kicking people when they're down.
It is. The students with the least social capital, the ones who can't talk their way out of a meeting with the dean, they're the ones who suffer most from a false accusation.
And this isn't just speculation. The source material references reporting from the Houston Chronicle. This is happening right now. Students are terrified.
And think about the psychological toll that takes. This leads us to the core theme of Steyn's piece, the erosion of trust. What does it do to a classroom when the baseline emotion is suspicion?
It creates that adversarial classroom he talks about.
Right. Instead of a partnership, I'm here to help you grow, It becomes a policing action. I'm here to catch you slipping. And the burden of proof is completely flipped.
That's the reverse onus, right? Guilty until proven innocent.
It's actually harder than that. In a court of law, you can provide an alibi. But here, if the machine says you used AI, how do you prove a negative? How do you prove you didn't use it?
I mean, I've seen students on Reddit talking about screen recording themselves, typing their entire essay just to have proof. That's insane.
It's performative. You aren't focusing on the ideas. You're focusing on creating evidence for a trial you hope never happens. As Steyn puts it, defending honest work is harder than producing dishonest work.
Because if you cheat well, you leave no trace. If you work honestly but get flagged, you're in a logical nightmare.
The University of Sydney guidelines touched on this too, the idea of false flags and broken trust. They make a crucial point. Even if the accusation is eventually dropped, the damage is done. The student feels unsafe. The relationship with that teacher is permanently fractured.
You can't learn from someone you think is out to get you. It's almost a form of gaslighting. You pour your heart into a paper, you know you wrote it, and a machine tells you, no, you didn't.
It makes you question your own reality, and it leads to a chilling effect. Students start dumbing down their writing. They start asking themselves, is this sentence too good? Will it look like AI? I better make it worse.
We are literally training them to be worse writers to please an algorithm.
Correct. We are incentivizing mediocrity just to avoid suspicion.
Okay, that is a bleak picture. We have a flawed tool, biased outcomes, a destroyed classroom culture. Surely, Stan and the others offer a way out. We can't just unplug the internet.
No, and no one is suggesting that. The solution isn't to go back to pen and paper. The solution is to change the design of this system.
So what's step one?
Step one is immediate. Stop the lazy policing. Steyn argues we must stop treating detector outputs as decisive evidence. Full stop.
So the score is just a data point. It's not a verdict.
Exactly. It should be the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one. If a student gets flagged, you don't send them an expulsion letter. You say, hey, this looks different from your usual style. Let's talk about it.
Which brings up the idea of due process.
Right. If schools are going to use these tools, they need transparent policies. The University of Sydney is very big on this. Students need to know what tools are being used, what's the threshold, and if I'm accused, what's the appeals process. There needs to be a requirement for corroborating evidence.
But the bigger fix, the long-term fix, seems to be about changing the assignments themselves. Because if we keep assigning generic, write 500 words on X essays, AI is always going to win that race.
That is the assessment redesign piece. And honestly, this is something education should have done years ago, AI or not. We need to move away from the final product obsession.
So grading the process, not just the paper.
Exactly. Grade the outline. Grade the first draft. Look at the version history. Ask for reflections on why they chose a certain argument. If a student can show the evolution of their ideas over 3 weeks, it is incredibly hard to fake that with a single prompt.
Steyn also mentions the Viva, which sounds very formal, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Not at all. It can be a 5-minute chat. Hey, I loved your point in paragraph 3 about the economic impact. Can you tell me more about what you were thinking there?
Oh, that's smart. Because if I just copy-pasted that from a bot, I probably don't remember what's in paragraph 3.
Precisely. You test the understanding, not just the output. If the student can articulate the idea, they learned it. Who cares if they used a spell checker? If they know the material, that's the win.
I like that. It brings the human element back. It turns assessment into a conversation.
It does. And there's one more solution I think is really forward-thinking. It's what we call the newsroom model.
Steyn references this. The idea that education should look at how journalism is handling AI.
Yes. Newsrooms aren't banning AI. That would be professional suicide. They are building transparency policies. We use AI to transcribe interviews, but not to write articles. We use AI to analyze data, but a human checks the facts.
So schools need a shared language for this.
Desperately. Right now, the rule is usually just don't cheat. But what does that even mean anymore? Can I use Grammarly? Can I use ChatGPT to brainstorm? To summarize a reading?
It's the ambiguity that gets students in trouble.
Exactly. If we establish clear lanes, here's what is allowed, here's what must be disclosed, then you remove the fear. If a student knows they can use AI for a certain part as long as they cite it, then honesty becomes the path of least resistance.
It's about bringing the usage into the light rather than forcing it into the shadows where the arms race happens.
And that stops the adversarial dynamic. It becomes, we are all figuring this out together rather than, I am watching you.
So if we look at the big picture here, we started with an arms race, institutions building walls, students finding ladders, and trust getting crushed in the middle.
And the takeaway is that we cannot win that race with better software. The detectors will never be perfect. The AI writers will always get better.
So the only way to win is to stop playing that specific game.
We have to change the game. The risk isn't that students will use technology, that's a given. The risk is that in our panic to police them, we normalize a culture of suspicion. We outsource the most human part of education mentorship, judgment to machines that don't understand context or bias or growth.
We need to stop trying to catch robots and start trying to teach humans.
That is it, in a nutshell.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone listening with a thought. We talked about the cautious writer and that chilling effect.
It's the part that stays with me the most.
If we keep down this path, if we keep relying on these black boxes to judge human work, are we actually training students to learn? Or are we just training them to strip all the personality, all the weirdness, all the humanity out of their writing just so they don't trigger a red flag?
It's a terrifying thought. Are we optimizing for bot-safe humans?
And take that outside the classroom. In your own life hiring, dating apps, credit scores, where are you letting a black box make a decision that should be human? Where have you accepted a probability score as the truth?
Something to think about.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.